what do you think holds people back and kind of gives people maybe the pause, feeling uncomfortable with putting themselves out there?
Oh, that's an excellent question. The thing that holds us back from anything ever is fear. It's fear of being uncomfortable. It's fear of being abandoned. It's fear of being rejected. It's fear of not being good enough. It's fear of not knowing. It's the same emotionally. It's the same psychologically. It's the same with business. It's the same in parenting. If you want to become someone different, you have to be willing to push through the discomfort and run up against the blueprints that otherwise would be holding you back.
Welcome to the Firestarter Podcast. I'm Willa Kammerer. Today we're joined by Bryan Post, human behavior expert, and he's going to share with us his journey of building a personal brand and platform around his expertise, which is deep. And we're also going to talk with his human behavior expertise around what holds people back from doing the same. So I'm really excited to be here, joined by Bryan, sharing his expertise, and really excited for this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me, Bryan.
Thank you for having me, Willa.
So walk us back a little bit. You've really built this strong platform. You have a, strong social media following. You speak, you've written a book, but it was a journey to get here. Can you walk me back through your personal story, how you developed this expertise? And I'd love to hear if there was a point where you knew you wanted to reach a bigger audience to make a greater impact. I'd love to hear that journey.
Yes. So I was born to do this work. I was in foster care as an infant, and then I was adopted. And so it was really my adoption journey and my adoption journey with my sister. We weren't biological, that really shaped my kind of trail towards mental health. I didn't know it then. It was very unconscious. I was an entrepreneur very early. And that's a very interesting kind of dichotomy. So I have this birth story and this adoption story, and then I also have this entrepreneur story. I was an entrepreneur really early at 6 years old. I had my first lemonade stand and was just really in love with business and that whole thing. And I got through college and had played football in college, so I lost the entrepreneurial journey. And then I had a mentor who said about a business a company I was working for at the time. I just finished my master's degree, and we were doing intensive in-home with families. And he said to me over a weekend, he said, "Well, you could do that." And I was like, okay. So then I'm driving home and I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, I could. And it's like he turned back on that entrepreneurial light for me. And then I never looked back. I'm 53 now, so I've been an entrepreneur. Haven't worked for anyone since I was 25 years old. And so that was that part of the journey. And then I was seeing families individually as a licensed clinical social worker. I have a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD. I just go by Bryan though. I always say my mom calls me Bryan. Everyone else should. And I was seeing families one at a time. And then I just had a moment where I'm like, I want to reach more people in the same amount of time. So how do I do that? Well, I started by giving lectures. So I got on the lecture circuit. First I lectured locally, and then I started lecturing around the country, really. And people don't realize, this is how I date myself. My first educational product was a VHS tape, and it was me in an interview with a lady. She was a reporter for the newspaper, friend of mine. I hired a videographer to come in, and she just interviewed me, and it was called Up Close and Personal with Bryan Post. That was my first educational, informational product. And then I had that shrink wrapped in these VHS tapes, and I would haul them around all over the country because I was speaking usually 3 days a week. Every other week I was in some different part of the country. And I would haul them around in a big old suitcase, peddling my little $20 VHS tapes. And that's how I got started. And then after that, I wrote my first book. And I had written a book previously and did not get it printed. But I knew that, number one, by having people come and hear me in audiences, I could reach more people that way. But number two, by having an educational product, they could take something home and put it on their shelves. And I have always been immune to business cards and brochures. I'm like, I throw that stuff away. I know people throw that stuff. People don't throw books away. They won't throw away a VHS tape at that time. And so I wrote my book and I started carrying that around. And then, and this was pre-YouTube, right? There was not even any YouTube going on. This is just me recording my lectures and turning them into informational products. The internet was just starting. I was very lucky to find some early internet marketing mentors, Dan Kennedy, Russell Brunson. Those were all my mentors early. And I just started, I knew that in order for me to grow my business, in order for me to reach more people, I had to promote myself. And I was one of the first mental health professionals in the late 90s to have a website because it wasn't a thing. And social workers, all my trainings in social workers didn't have websites. And at one point, and this was the entrepreneurial part of me. I used to love Robert G. Allen. It was so funny. One of our guy that was a guy I know, he wrote a book, and Robert G. Allen wrote the foreword. And Robert G. Allen went to a city. He said, put me in any city in the United States, give me 72 hours and no money, and I'll do a real estate deal. And I heard him say that, and I just loved him. I loved that energy. I loved that confidence, that charisma. And so I happened to be speaking at the University of Arkansas Medical School. And I said, give me 3 families who previously have not been successful in any other mental health treatment for any period of time. Give me 30 days. Let me coach them on the phone for 30 days. I don't even have to work with them in person. And I'll guarantee you 90% more improvement in that 30 days than all the years that they've done. And I had 3 families. They raised their hands and we did the 30 days coaching. They had breakthroughs. And that was just it's just how I've always promoted myself. And let me tell you, the mental health profession is not one for promotion. It's not one for marketing. And a lot of people take issue with the way that I promote. But I know that if I don't promote, someone's not going to hear my message. And that means everything to me.
It's so true. And you're actually reminding me, we have a client we're working with right now at Firestarter. And similarly, he works with parents of dysregulated teens. And he's got a successful, in-person practice, but came to us because he knew that he's written a book like but to reach more people, he knows that so many more people need his work.
Yes.
And so, the way to get it out there is to go online. So we're helping him, kind of like translate that expertise into the online space. And I think, you were onto it early.
Yeah.
But it is, there does need to be an intentionality around it. I'd love to talk with you about, what's that kind of like tension between what do you think holds people back and kind of gives people maybe the pause, feeling uncomfortable with putting themselves out there?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And I have a methodology that I pioneered. It's called Fear to Love Method. And it's all about helping people understand their stress and their fear and the blueprints of that, and how the blueprints of who you are, your early childhood experiences. Neuroscience tells us that from conception to the age of 5, our brain is developed 97% developed. And within that 97% development are the blueprints for all of our future social and emotional relationships. So much of how we show up in the world is defined from our conception to age 5. And so I really help people explore the deeper experiences and blueprints of who they are, because as adults, those messages and stories show up and hold them hostage in ways that they're not even conscious of. And so I say all that to then come back and say, Willa, the thing that holds us back from anything ever is fear. It's fear of being uncomfortable. It's fear of being abandoned. It's fear of being rejected. It's fear of not being good enough. It's fear of not knowing. The only thing that ever holds us back from the next level is fear. But the significance there is that in order to get to the next level, you've got to be willing to push through the discomfort, which is fear, in order to get to the next level. So most people aren't willing to do that because no one likes feeling uncomfortable. When you get ready to go to a workout in the morning, I don't know anyone who wakes up and says, yes, leg day. Everyone says, ugh, leg day, but you do it. It's the same emotionally. It's the same psychologically. It's the same with business. It's the same in parenting. If you want to become someone different, you have to be willing to push through the discomfort and run up against the blueprints that otherwise would be holding you back.
I always describe it, I think you've described it perfectly. Personally, I feel it's a muscle, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a muscle that needs to be developed, but you can't strengthen that muscle unless you work that muscle, right? Yeah. So it's really uncomfortable. That first leg day is uncomfortable, but maybe you kind of, it hurts, but you kind of feel good after, right? So it's that reps, it's those reps that build that muscle.
Sure.
Is there a structure around kind of breaking through? How does someone go about breaking through and almost learning to love the process of strengthening and of kind of putting themselves out there, but then feeling also kind of this satisfaction and, I didn't die. That didn't kill me. It was scary. Mm-hmm. But then there's a level of satisfaction and deeper self-trust. I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
So I really like to take people back to the foundation of who they are. And when we go back to the foundation of who we are, and it doesn't matter, whatever you're trying to do in life, I want to explore for you, what is that feeling that you're having right in this moment? So whatever it is that you want to do that you feel like creating some discomfort for you, creating some challenge for you, what is that feeling? Let's dial in on that feeling. Let's slow down. Let's close your eyes. Let's take some deep breaths. Let's find that feeling in your body. Find that feeling, latch onto that feeling, expand that feeling, and then ask yourself, when was the first time I ever had this feeling? When was the first time I ever felt this? Now spend time connecting to that, because what you'll find is that what's showing up now, the seeds for that were planted long ago. So you take the feeling in the present, you breathe into it. You have to turn off your brain because your brain's going to want to think, but this is not a thinking experience. This is a feeling experience, which are two different sides of the brain. It's emotion. Emotion is energy and motion. So you go back, you ask yourself, when was the first time I felt this? Then you listen. You're breathing, you get really quiet and you listen because your body's always communicating to you. And then your body's going to go boom, and it's going to release a memory. And as soon as you release that memory, you're going to go, whoa. And then latch onto that for a moment. You don't have to do anything with it. You hold on to it. You breathe into it and breathe deeper into that feeling. What was that experience? What was that experience that planted the seeds for this fear and this overwhelm and this anxiety that I'm feeling today? So you go through, and I call that the process of honoring. And I'm describing not only a really intense process, I'm describing it cognitively, but it's a really challenging process. You go in and you honor what that feeling was by allowing yourself to really feel it. So if it was a feeling it could have been an in utero experience. Some people are able to go back and connect to in utero messages. Could have been something that happened at 3. Could have been something that happened at 5. Could have been something that happened at 10. I have parents all the time will say, this happened when I was 8 years old. and it has defined my entire life, and I didn't even realize it. I give you a really quick story. I was talking about trauma, how trauma is any stressful event which is prolonged, overwhelming, and unpredictable, at a big national convention on addiction. And I said, when you haven't had an opportunity to express, process, and understand it, a short-term stressful experience can impact you for the rest of your life. So a woman comes up at break and she says, "Oh my God, you have just changed my life." She said, "I have always been terrified by birds." She said, "The other day, a bird landed on the hood of my car and I froze." She said, "I said to that bird, 'Bird, please get off of my car.'" She said, "I could not move. 'Bird, please get off my car.'" Finally, the bird flew away and I was able to drive to work. She said, "I just realized when I was 5 years old, I was in the backyard with my sister and we had a chicken, and that chicken attacked me and it terrified me. And after that, I was always afraid of birds." This is a 45, 50-year-old woman who had had an experience when she was 5 that was still defining her life. So sometimes, Willa, it is, I always say these things are simple, they're not easy. It is as simple as facing the feeling that you're having in the moment, spending a little time with it, realizing you're not going to die. You're not going to die. Going back and exploring when it first started, and then honoring that experience and allowing that energy to unlock in your system so it can move. And when that energy can move, you can be freed up a little bit more, but more importantly, you grow into a deeper conscious awareness of what's been holding you.
And yeah, there's so many things there, and that's really powerful. It's making me think of, that old saying, life begins on the other side of fear.
Yes.
And I think that when you can name it, when it's not this, I think the bird is this like powerful symbol, whatever the bird is for someone, whatever it is in their life that is, created this block, created this imprint. Once she was able to identify and kind of recall that story, that experience with the bird, then it's a lot less scary because she can then, work through it. So I think that a lot, as you've said, of fear and things that hold people back is when they're in the kind of foggy amorphous, but when you can kind of concretely begin to name it and to really work through it, that's when life starts to begin because, it's not just this thing in the shadows that's holding you back. So that's really powerful. I'd love for you to reflect on thinking of our audience here at the Firestarter Podcast, people who look at you and, maybe they're like, I really want to do that too, but I just feel this, feel kind of held back. You reflecting on your life, had you stayed in the shadows? Had you continued doing your work, but on a smaller stage, right? So, working one-on-one, not that that isn't high impact, but what would have been missed if you hadn't kind of worked through anything that may have been holding you back to push through and, reach a wider audience, write the book, put yourself out there, show up on stages and just expand your mission to a wider audience?
Yeah, well, what would have been missed fundamentally is a life well lived. I mean, I have lived an exceptional life, traveled around the world. I have worked with families in the deepest amount of pain. I've done this work so long that I have kids that I worked with as children who still consider me a mentor now as they're adults with their own children. And then because of the work I've chosen to do and the comfort I've been able to achieve and the confidence I've been able to achieve, I get to be in relationship with people when I'm with them. I was sharing a story earlier that my Uber driver today, we were driving, he asked me, what it is that I do. And I told him, I'm a behavior expert. And he's like, okay. And I said, I spend a lot of time working with adopted and foster children. He said, well, funny story. He said, I was in foster care. He said, I was in 15 foster placements. And number one, if I hadn't been able to grow and expand and travel, I would not be able to meet interesting people like this man, but I'm able to have a 10-minute ride with this guy and listen to him and thank him for sharing his story with me. And he went on and he created a business doing $300 million a year in revenue and just phenomenally successful in business. And he says, and I have 3 daughters, and he said they still don't know me. And I'm able to share with him. It's very risky and feels very vulnerable to share your story with your children, but you are holding them back from understanding who their father really is. And he said, you're so right. He said, because the reason I'm driving Uber is because all 3 of my girls say, if I don't do something, I'm going to start to cause problems for them. So he said, once a month, I drive Uber. He said, I always meet interesting people. But it's just an opportunity for me to be able to expand my horizons and impact so many more people and just have so many more experiences. And I still get to impact people by being on this podcast with you and being able to reach your audience and share this space with you. You know, you can't do that. Bryan Post sitting in an office in Mountain View, Oklahoma, working with the same families day after day after day, would not be able to do that. And I want to be a light to the world. And when I leave, I want to not just leave a legacy for my own family, my own children. I want to be a part of the legacy for other families. And I've been able to do that.
I love that story that you shared. And to me, when those moments happen to me, when I'm on the road, when I'm living out my impact, just as you are, to me, that's like this synchronous kind of, it shows that you are on your aligned path, right? Yes. This is the kind of the universe saying like, yes, you are in the right place. You are meant to connect with this person. But if you were sitting in your office in Oklahoma, that moment never would have happened. So I think to me, I think about, and I use the word alignment a lot. That is how I relate to that kind of experience. I would love, how does someone know if they are being held back or if they are kind of like living out to the fullest extent?
We all know. We all know, but it is a very challenging process to be honest and authentic with yourself. Everyone looks in the mirror every single morning when they brush their teeth. The only thing you have to do is look yourself in the eyes and say, am I living to my fullest potential or am I not? And if you're not, that's okay. That is not to be judged. That's only to be made aware of. And then if you want to move to a higher potential, now challenge yourself to write those goals and talk to the people and listen to the podcasts of Willa and the Firestarters and find the crumbs that success leaves and start seeking to expand yourself. But if you're comfortable being where you're at, then be comfortable being where you're at. But we all know if we're on the path that we truly want to be on, and it just takes us being honest and authentic.
Well, I think thank you so much for all that you have shared. Your work is so important, and I'm just glad that you broke through whatever you followed, that you came back to the, entrepreneurial roots.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're all out here being fire starters, right?
That's right.
And everyone has the fire starter in them. So Bryan, thank you so much for everything. I would love for you to share with our listeners. How can they find you? How can they learn more about your work?
The easiest is probably just follow me on Instagram at Bryan Post Official, Bryan with a Y, and then feartolove.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, holding this space and sharing all that you have today.
My pleasure, Willa. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning into another episode of the Firestarter Podcast. You can find show notes, Bryan's links, and everything at thefirestarterpodcast.com. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Willa Kammerer, and find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you tune into your podcast. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you on the next episode.